baiting these sons of bitches. I'm out there on these right-wing shows, so I'm not scared to do that. Where the hell is the Democratic Party? Where's our equivalent of Turning Point USA?
Newsom's team doubled down, repeating the snack-size slap on X. Joe Rogan is a snack-sized podcaster who can't stop talking about me. Obsessed? Crush? No thank you. But is too scared to have me on and let his audience hear the truth.
He's talking some on Twitter.
I know. It's like, you think that's going to work? Like, that's so, it's like, this is a bad strategy. Like, I probably would have had him on.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, nah, what are you doing?
There is a fun version where you just do it and cook them. You know?
Joe Rogan is putting Gavin Newsom on blast for what he calls the unraveling of California, and the fallout is nothing short of stunning. Podcast Titan has been locked in a simmering public feud with the governor. This week, tensions boiled over when Rogan ripped the lid off a long brewing controversy. Given what he revealed on the biggest podcast in the world, it's hard to imagine Newsom walking away from this without serious political scars.
Why won't you have me on the show? He won't have me on the show. It's one way. And he has guests coming and attacking and bashing, but he will not have me on the show, period. Full stop. He should have me on the show. Come on my show.
Gavin Newsom has publicly floated the idea of sitting down with Joe Rogan, openly suggesting he'd welcome an invitation to the podcast. But so far, Rogan doesn't seem eager to make it happen, and that hesitation speaks volumes. Newsom has built a reputation as a polished, media-savvy operator, quick on his feet, smooth with his delivery, and rarely caught off guard. Yet critics argue that beneath the slick presentation lies a pattern of carefully crafted word salads. Long-winded answers paired with animated hand gestures that sound substantial, but often leave listeners wondering what was actually said. To his supporters, Newsom is a forward-thinking progressive navigating a massive, complex state. To his detractors, he's the face of California's economic strain and social turbulence in recent years. They point to rising living costs, business departures, and public safety concerns as evidence of deeper issues. A Rogan sit-down would be more than just a podcast appearance. It would be a high-stakes confrontation in front of millions. Rogan, however, claps back by humiliating Newsom.
You can't ruin a city and then go on to ruin a state and say, guys, that was just practice.
I know.
Once I get it as a president, I'm going to fix it. Fix it all.
I mean, it's so crazy, but he's such a great politician. I mean,
No,
he's
he's
so
not.
smooth.
He's
You
not,
don't think
though.
so?
No, I think he's terrible.
Rogan attacking Newsom's job performance in California.
You have the highest unemployment.
Yeah.
You have the highest homelessness.
Look what they did with Hollywood. You had-
Money's missing. You killed Hollywood. Like, Hollywood doesn't exist anymore. It's literally gone.
Newsom responding to Rogan on X, posting California is the fourth largest economy in the world, but number one in manufacturing, farming, new business starts, tech and VC investments, Fortune 500 companies, public higher education. I could continue. Invite me on anytime, Joe Rogan.
Critics argue that many of the accomplishments Gavin Newsom proudly highlights were set in motion long before he ever stepped into the governor's office. California didn't suddenly become the fourth largest economy in the world because of one administration. It was already an economic powerhouse. The state's dominance in agriculture, ranked number one in farming output nationwide, was built over decades of infrastructure, innovation, and private enterprise. In other words, California was already operating at the top tier. That's precisely why some political observers are concerned. They believe the real test of leadership isn't inheriting a thriving state, but preserving and improving it. Today, they point to rising homelessness, layers of paralyzing bureaucracy, and ongoing struggles to effectively manage devastating wildfires. For them, the issue isn't past glory, it's present stability. Fear among critics isn't about what California once was, but whether it's being steered in the right direction now.
It was all that before you were there. It was all that forever. It's because the weather's perfect, man. It has nothing to do with you.
Newsom's team posting this photo on X, writing that, quote, little Joe is snack size because he can't handle full-size debates.
I'm not afraid to go. I'm punching Joe Rogan, okay? That son of a bitch not used to that. And he's going to dismiss it. He's going to laugh it off. I mean, tough guy, all that. But he's going to have me off.
As tensions escalated, critics say Gavin Newsom shifted from substance to rhetoric, taking personal swipes at Joe Rogan rather than directly addressing the points being raised. To them, that pivot felt telling. In the world of public debate, name-calling is often viewed as a last resort, something people lean on when they feel cornered or unable to win on the merits of the argument itself. Instead of engaging Rogan's criticisms head-on, detractors argue that Newsom chose to question Rogan's credibility and character. Supporters, of course, might see it differently, framing the exchange as a pushback against what they consider unfair attacks. But critics insist this pattern reflects a broader political strategy. When the debate becomes uncomfortable, shift the focus to the messenger. Whether one agrees or not, the episode underscores how quickly political discourse can devolve from policy disagreements into personal jabs, leaving voters to decide who truly made the stronger.
This is a way that Republicans are just using illegal immigrants to deflect the conversation.
And the answer
is yes.
No, it is
it's yes.
not. You
Because
to look at the facts.
illegal immigrants are not the reason why our healthcare system is broken.
Yeah, it's not deflection at all. In fact, I brought receipts. So here's the CMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, right here with their press release earlier this year saying they were having to increase their oversight on states like California who were abusing Medicaid and classifying it as an EUSA, an emergency system, when it wasn't. You've got the average state spends 5% of its Medicaid roughly on emergency services. California, 35 to 40%. Why would that be? Because California passed a state law that says we will fund Medicaid for illegals, and then, oh, by the way, we'll raise our provider taxes, and then, oh, by the way, we'll use that as a match to draw down federal funds. And they're using this whole cavitation process.
An accounting trick to put it on the taxpayer.
Money is fungible, and California's loophole is abused.
Gavin Newsom's time in office has not been without controversy. Critics frequently point to allegations of mismanagement, questionable spending priorities, and a lack of tangible results despite massive public investment. The most cited example is California's high-speed rail project, a vision that has consumed billions of dollars over the years. What was once pitched as a transformative transportation breakthrough has, in the eyes of skeptics, become a symbol of delays, ballooning costs, and limited visible progress. Then there's the homelessness crisis. Billions have reportedly been allocated toward addressing the issue, yet encampments remain a visible and painful reality in many cities across the state. Opponents argue that despite the funding, meaningful and lasting solutions remain elusive. Water management is another flashpoint. With recurring droughts and infrastructure concerns, critics question whether long-term planning has matched the scale of the challenge. For them, the central issue isn't funding, it's accountability and results. These are the reasons why Joe Rogan wouldn't host Gavin Newsom.
Debating these sons of bitches. I'm out there on these right-wing shows, so I'm not scared to do that. Where the hell is the Democratic Party? Where's our equivalent of Turning Point USA?
Newsom's team doubled down, repeating the snack-size slap on X. Joe Rogan is a snack-sized podcaster who can't stop talking about me. Obsessed? Crush? No thank you. But is too scared to have me on and let his audience hear the truth.
He's talking some on Twitter.
I know, it's like, you think that's going to work? Like, that's so stupid. Like, this is such a bad look. It's such a bad choice.
There's a little desperation in it.
But it's just stupid. It's like, this is a bad strategy. Like, I probably would have had him on.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, nah, what are you doing?
There is a fun version where you just do it and cook them.
Rogan supporters, that exchange felt like a true mic drop moment. One of those instances where a pointed critique lands and lingers. They argue that if Gavin Newsom were to appear on the show, it wouldn't be a routine media stop. It would be a high-pressure, unscripted conversation in front of millions. And in that kind of format, there are no teleprompters, no carefully timed press conferences, just long-form dialogue where every answer can be probed. Critics of the governor speculate that Newsom's tendency toward lengthy, carefully framed responses could work against him in that environment. Rogan is known for pressing guests, circling back, and asking follow-ups until he feels the point has been fully addressed. In that setting, a meandering explanation might unravel under scrutiny. The irony they suggest is that instead of Rogan cooking Newsom, the governor could end up undermining himself simply by over-explaining and losing control of the narrative.
Governor Newsom has repeatedly said that Democrats need to do a much better job attracting men, especially young men who are often drawn to podcasts. And Aaron, nobody does that better than Joe Rogan. His interview with then candidate Trump last year got 60 million views on YouTube.
Argue that Gavin Newsom's current approach mirrors a broader strategy some Democrats have used in recent election cycles. The idea, they say, was simple. Go on the offensive, draw sharp contrasts, and aggressively target opponents, particularly Donald Trump, in hopes of energizing the base and persuading voters in Middle America. The assumption was that relentless criticism would weaken the opposition and consolidate support. But detractors contend that this strategy didn't unfold as planned. Instead of winning over undecided voters, they argue that it sometimes reinforced political divisions and hardened existing loyalties. For some Americans, constant attacks felt more like noise than persuasion. Rather than shifting the conversation to policy or vision, it became a battle of personalities. Those who see parallels believe Newsom risks repeating that pattern, focusing heavily on attacking critics instead of addressing underlying concerns. In politics, they say, strategy matters just as much as message, and misreading the mood of the electorate can carry lasting consequences.
It was never on my bingo card. I didn't grow up saying, one day I'll be this person. There's not a photo on the wall of me
there are
meeting
people
someone.
that think that you were that way back in the day.
Yeah, I think well, that's a whole deeper conversation of perception versus reality. And I have a lot of work to do on that. And I'm going to be doing a little more of that with this book. And now it sounds like, he's got a book. Of course he's running. Yeah. But truly, I've got a book that I'm putting out early next year, that I've been working on for 4 or 5 years, because I can't take the perception of me versus the reality of what I experienced growing up and in my own childhood and my own experiences. So I'm trying to shape-shift that from my perspective, not everyone else's.
What's the biggest misconception about you?
I just think this notion, I don't know where, I know where it comes from, but I think this notion of the silver spoon, I was born into great wealth and privilege, and it's quite the contrary. And
moments like these, critics say Gavin Newsom appears eager to reshape the narrative around his background, leaning into a more relatable, self-made image rather than the one many voters already associate with him. Common perception is that he didn't exactly rise from obscurity or hardship. While his family may not have been ultra wealthy, they were far from struggling, and he benefited from access, education, and social networks that positioned him well from an early age. One detail that often resurfaces in these discussions is his connection to one of California's wealthiest and most influential figures, who served as his godfather. To skeptics, that kind of proximity to power complicates any attempt at a grass-to-grace storyline. They argue that opportunity and connections matter in politics, and Newsom had both. Whether that background is seen as privilege or simply circumstance depends on perspective, but it undeniably shapes how his story is received.
No wonder that in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now. I heard that California is overtaxed and overregulated. San Francisco, the city's so nice you'll step in poop twice. It's an area where homeless people were urinating and defecating, and it was starting to annoy the people breaking into cars. So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system.
Bill Maher has repeatedly voiced frustration over what he sees as California's spiraling dysfunction under leaders like Gavin Newsom. On his show and in interviews, Maher has argued that the problem isn't just ideology, it's the suffocating layers of bureaucracy that slow everything to a crawl. According to him, good intentions get buried under endless permits, reviews, committees, and regulations that make even the simplest public projects painfully expensive. One example he highlighted was particularly striking. Private entity reportedly facing costs approaching $2 million just to build a single public toilet. For Maher, that wasn't just wasteful spending, it was symbolic of a system that has become detached from common sense. When basic infrastructure balloons into multi-million-dollar undertakings, he argues, something is fundamentally broken. His broader point is that bureaucracy, not just politics, may be the real force driving frustration across the state.
Vast network of regulators, administrators, inspectors, contract reviewers, project managers, fee assessors, special commissioners, zoning officers, and consultants whose jobs seem to be to make sure nothing ever happens and then charge you for it. The people who answer the phone, permit office, how may I hinder you?
At the center of all this is a larger debate about leadership, accountability, and the direction of California itself. From Joe Rogan's sharp critiques to Bill Maher's warnings about runaway bureaucracy, pressure on Gavin Newsom isn't coming from just one corner. Critics question whether the state's economic strength is being sustained, whether public funds are translating into real results, and whether political strategy is replacing practical solutions. Supporters may argue that governing a state as massive and complex as California is never simple, but detractors insist complexity cannot be an excuse for stagnation. In the end, the conversation isn't just about personalities or podcast showdowns, it's about performance. And as the spotlight grows brighter, voters will ultimately decide whether the narrative surrounding Newsom reflects political theater or genuine concern.